Hello lovely crafty friends, welcome to Love Builds of Crafts. I am Sasha, and today we're going to be looking at a few ways to change up your stitching, your paper stitching, featuring the Spellbinders stitching dies from their birthday collection. So let's go ahead and get started. So the die we'll be using today is the Fanfare cover plate. I like this die, so you can stitch it or just use it as it is, because you can also cut it into the paper or cut it out as a different panel, because it comes in two separate pieces. So this is when you cut it out of your panel, and that's what it looks like. To stitch this, I use two different needles, right? I use a bigger needle that I can get through the holes, and then I use a smaller needle for my beading so that I can pass the beads through. So one way you can change up your stitching is to do some ink blending, so that some of the areas are partially ink blended, and then you can just stitch some of the other areas that are not ink blended. What this does is it lessens the workload. So if you're not a fan of stitching but you like the way the cover plates look, just go ahead and blend some of the areas out, and then you can stitch whatever is left. Or you can do some blending and then stitch over that blending, because that really focuses the color as well. So it's up to you how you want to use this. I'm just showing you a fun way that you can change up your stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and start stitching now. Don't mind that color palette, okay? I just grabbed whatever inks were on my desk. It's not like an actual color palette that I planned. I mean, not planet, a color palette that I planned. It just so happened to be what was near me. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do some really basic stitching just to show you what it would look like once it's all stitched up. I'm not going to stitch everything, just to show you how to stitch. I use 2 strands of the floss. I show you how to separate it in another video. If you haven't watched that video, I will link it in the description below, because I don't know how to add the cards that pop up like at the corner there, but I can link it in the description. So I like to keep the back of my card really neat, just in case I decide to use that panel that I'm stitching as a card front for my card. So I go to the back and I just thread a couple of times and then create these loops, and that seals it up so that it doesn't unravel. So this is what it looks like once you've done with the stitching. You just use your imagination and imagine I've stitched the whole panel in black, and you can see that it would actually really be effective just by doing some partial stitching and then ink blending the other areas of your panel. So I'm just showing there how I would use it as a card front. If you want to do, that's also an option. Another way that you can change up your stitching is to add some beading. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you, adding beads is really time consuming, but I just really love beadwork. I love it so much, so I just thought I'd share 2 different ways to do it, just in case you love it as much as I do and you don't mind that it's time consuming at all. Okay, so now that we've got a nicely threaded needle, we're going to take it through the back and bring it to the front of our panel through the middle hole, and then pick up a seed bead and then put it through to the back of the panel through that same hole that we brought it to the top of the panel. So once again, you bring your needle to the top of your panel through the back of the hole, opening a hole, and then you pick up your seed bead, your little bead, and then you put the needle through that same hole so that it goes to the back of your panel. I really hope this is making sense, guys, but please just watch and slow down in the settings if you're not getting it. And if you're really not getting it, as always, you can message me on Instagram and I will try and show you a different way to do it, or make it even slower than real time. To seal off the beads so that they don't all come out, I do the exact same thing that I did with the normal stitching. I go to the back, grab all my threads there, and then I do a couple of stitches just going under all of that stitching and then coming up to the top, and then I make the knots that you do by looping through the thread just like that, and that makes a couple of knots so that all your stitching is held together nicely. I'm not the best explaining things, but I can show you better than I can tell you, like the saying goes. So another way to add beading is to add it to the stitching that you've already done. You can also stitch as you bead, but let me show you how to add it to your stitching first, and then you'll see how to stitch and bead at the same time. So what I'm doing here is I'm just coming in through, just like we did for the previous technique, where you just come through the back, you grab your bead and then thread it through that same hole. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So I've come through the back, I've picked up my bead, and I'm just going to go to the back through that same hole. I'm using a different colored thread and bead there so that you can see what I'm really doing, but normally I'll try and find like the closest matching floss to the bead because it just looks neater that way. You can have contrasting colors, that gives a nicer effect, but I just like it when it's the matching colors because it just looks nicer to me. But it's up to you. I'm just showing you the options that you can try out and test out what you like and what you don't like. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to stitch and bead at the same time, because it is faster than the technique that we just did, which is to stitch first and then add your beading after. So what you do is you bring your needle to the top, pick up your bead and then send it to the back through the same hole. And then you're going to come from the back from another hole, so that you're like doing your stitch, you're following the stitching design. And then once you've done the stitch that comes to meet in the middle hole, you're going to get your bead there and send your thread to the back, and then you're going to come to the front or to the top of your panel through the back from another hole, and then you go to the middle, create your stitch there, and go to the back, come through to the top again, pick up a bead, and then send it all to the back. I hope I'm explaining that well enough, but like I said, please watch the video. I know sometimes I play videos whilst I'm doing something, but this is one of them videos where you have to watch. Otherwise, you know, what I'm saying is like, what language is she even speaking right now? I know beading looks like it's time consuming, and I'm not going to lie to you, it is, but once you get the hang of it, you become faster and better at it, so it doesn't take as much time. And these are our 4 ideas. I think it's 4 ideas because you can ink blend your panel first and then do some partial stitching, and then you can add some beading to your partial stitching, or you can add some beading separately without stitching. So 4 ideas, and I'm going to now show you some samples that show those ideas. So over here I did some ink blending to the middle point of my stitchless beading. I didn't use the blending brush because it's too big. What I did instead was use a Q-tip, and what I did to get that soft color is I first used the Q-tip to rub on some spiced marmalade, and then I took that Q-tip, dipped it in my worn lipstick and then in some white pigment ink, and then I rubbed that over it, and that gives like this sort of like a soft glowy look once you've gone ahead and added your beads. So I just wanted to show you how I did that, just in case you wanted to try and make the same looking card. So I really love this card, and I combined quite a few of the ideas. I did some ink blending, some partial ink blending, and then some of the stitchless beading, and then just some normal stitches, but it's like partial stitching, so it didn't take as long as it would if I had tried to bead this whole card. So this is one of my favorites. So for this next card, I just wanted to play with color, so I went all out and got my brightest colors, but then I focused the beading to the areas where I knew I'd have my sentiment, because that also gives your card a nice focal point. So the way that I did that beading area, because you can see that it's a circle Meanwhile, the fanfare pattern is actually semicircles. I will show you what I did to get another part of a semicircle so that I could create a full circle. The English is leaving again. So I just used a circle die and I'll cut out a part of my panel, and then I will just trim the excess off so that I'm only left with the semicircle shape. And then I stitched that and beaded it before sticking it onto my panel. Now you can decide whether you want to add foam tape or not. I didn't add foam tape because I wanted it to integrate into the pattern, not stand out as much. Speaking of die cutting out circles, for this card I created a shaker by die cutting out the circles. I also had some two-tone stitching just to create a bit of fun and, like, I don't know, just like a playful look. So that's this card here. And the other one, I also did die cut out some circles, but then I also covered those circles with some flowers. Now the stitching that you see there, the stitch detail, you can see that it's a different type of stitch, and I have a video of that on Instagram showing you exactly how to do that. So if you're not following me on Instagram, please make sure that you do. And that is it for today. These are all our cards, and thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment below and let me know if you want more stitching ideas or whatever you want to see on the channel.